Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we are going to be doing a setup and installation guide for the new Be Quiet Dark Rock 4 CPU cooler using the soon-to-be released Ryzen 7 2700X from AMD. In addition to that, we will be taking a look at what improvements Be Quiet has made with this latest iteration. And since the new Ryzen CPUs are still under embargo, we can't get into any thermal testing today, but stay tuned for that in my full review on the 19th for that information. There are two new coolers here from Be Quiet, the Dark Rock 4 retailing for $75 and the Dark Rock Pro 4 at $90. The key difference between the two are the size and how much heat the coolers can dissipate. The Dark Rock 4 has a single fan and is rated for a 200 watt TDP, while the Dark Rock Pro 4 has two fans, which makes it a fair bit chunkier, but it's capable of handling up to 250 watts of heat dissipation. The mounting for the two coolers is very similar on the AM4 platform and thankfully has seen a huge upgrade from the previous lineup. The Dark Rock 3 coolers were notoriously annoying to install because you had to wedge a tiny spanner between the heatsink and mounting hardware, which was quite frustrating. This time around, we get a great looking magnetic tipped Phillips head screwdriver to make installation completely painless. On the Dark Rock Pro 4, you can access the screws through the top of the cooler with the long screwdriver, while the smaller Dark Rock 4 has accessible screws at the side of the heatsink, which are also easy to get to. There are also two aesthetic improvements this time around. The first being the Be Quiet lettering on the heatsink, which is now orientated correctly, so you don't have to install the cooler incorrectly to have the letters facing around the right way. And secondly, the paint has been much improved, giving it a more solid and matte black look compared to the older models, which had more of a bare metal appearance. Like I said at the start of the video, we will be installing one of the new Ryzen 2 processors from AMD, which will release on the 19th of April. Pre-ordering is actually available now for all the new CPUs. If you want more info on that, check out the Amazon links in the description below, along with where you can get either of the new coolers here from Be Quiet. With all that out of the way though, let's get on to the installation. I always find it best to install my coolers outside of the case on a new build so that I have more room to maneuver around the motherboard. And to prevent damaging your motherboard, I also recommend using the box that it came in as a work surface. Once you have the motherboard out, we need to remove the stock retainers that come on all AM4 motherboards. The two plastic pieces are attached with a total of 4 screws that you can remove with the included screwdriver from Be Quiet. You'll notice 4 small backplate bolts remaining that are part of the rear backplate that we will be using here in the next step. Inside of the box with your Be Quiet cooler, there are 2 sets of mounting hardware, one for Intel and the other for AMD. Since we're working with a Ryzen CPU, we need the AMD hardware. Go ahead and place the 4 plastic spacers over the backplate bolts that I mentioned previously. From here, we need to attach the mounting brackets. There are 2 sets of holes on here, one for AM4, which we will be using, and the other for AM3. The AM4 hole is clearly labeled, and that's where we will be slotting our screw to attach these to the motherboard. You'll want to do this now with the 4 included screws through the spacers we installed and tightening them down into the motherboard. With that done, we can go ahead and install our Ryzen CPU to the motherboard, which is fairly straightforward, and this will apply to any Ryzen processor with the sole exception of Threadripper. On the corner, you will notice a gold triangle that will correspond to a small triangle on the motherboard, usually in the top left corner somewhere. Go ahead and raise the retention arm on the PCB now and gently lower the CPU into the socket, making sure it is securely in place before lowering the arm back down. It's just that simple. Be Quiet does include thermal paste with the cooler that I'll be using here, but you can use whatever brand that you personally like. I'll be using the line method on the Ryzen CPU because that's what seems to work best on this lineup of processors from AMD. Next up is installing the actual heatsink. I found it easiest to lower the heatsink down on the processor first and then slide in the mounting bridge before tightening it into place with the 2 included screws. Just make sure that you alternate sides every couple of turns of the screwdriver so that even pressure is being applied down onto the IHS. I have to say that this installation method was so much better than the previous coolers from Be Quiet and made it one of the simplest installations that I've ever done with a tower heatsink. So I can't give Be Quiet enough praise for the improvements they've made with the installation process on the new lineup of coolers. The last step here is the fan that has two arms you need to loop through the holes and then slide onto the heatsink. One thing that I like about this type of mounting is that you can adjust the fans to sit higher if you need to. For instance, if you had an issue with fan clearance over your system memory, you can actually just raise the fan up a little bit higher so that everything can fit in there properly. But that's going to wrap it up for this setup and installation guide on the Dark Rock 4 using the AMD Ryzen 7 2700X. If you have any questions about the setup process, please be sure to leave them down in the comments below. And of course, if you want to buy either of the new coolers or the upcoming Ryzen processors, which are available for pre-order, I'll have links in the description below as well. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, don't forget to leave a like on it down below and subscribe if you're not already. I'll see you all tomorrow for another video. Ta-ra.